Welcome again to another podcast of Lighting the Candle, A World That Works. I'm Bill Carell, and it's been my pleasure to be hosting and co-hosting with these lovely ladies. I've got Jan Jeremias and Lisa Sheehan with me today. Our fourth leg of the table is busy doing other things, so we'll just have to do the best we can for old Ken. So in the meantime, it's been a very interesting actually, it's been a lifetime of interesting stuff. It's not even like anything new. It's just been completely ongoingly try to keep up if you can, Bill. So I guess really where we are today, I would like to talk about a couple of things in particular, but I think one of them that's most interesting to me today is how about being gracious in winning and losing? And how about setting an expectation of some sort of collaboration and synergy back into motion again in our culture? Because I would say I wouldn't have to talk to too many people to kind of hear the words division, divisive, you know, the word hate comes up far more times in conversation and in posts on Facebook than I can ever remember before. And I'm actually wondering if we might be in one of those particular time periods where it's probably not a good idea to pay too much attention to all of that stuff, simply because the actual people that are putting it out may not have the best of intentions for you and me. But first of all, they don't know us. Second of all, they probably don't care. And third of all, um, what's that we taught our children? You don't have to pick that up. No, don't pick that up. Just kind of let that lie there. It'll be okay. Just step over, move on down the road, and keep smiling. So let me see. Did anybody listen to what I said? Because I sure didn't.
Um, well, as you said, don't pick that up, Bill. All I could think of was don't touch that hot stove. And I feel like these days, that's more like when you're reading and deciphering through whatever you want to say, hate mongering or sensationalistic thought of, you know, overreaction. It's kind of like, don't read it, like, don't pick it up. Don't pick it up, like, don't touch that hot fire. It doesn't, it's not gonna, it's going to burn you in some way, whether that be emotionally or physically or something.
Well, I've been intentionally sticking my head in the lion's mouth with what I would tend to call ambiguous intentioned posts on Facebook. And the neat part of it is to more or less just wait and see who responds. It's almost always not somebody who's a frequent flyer on my posts on Facebook. It's almost not the ones who are liking my kitty cats and my steaks and my prime rib and all that sort of thing. It's usually someone who's just kind of searching for some raw meat to grab onto to spew something. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So here comes the training part. This is like when you intentionally create an opportunity for some people to go too far in their post and then don't react to it, even though it's a burning desire to want to say something, like, are you really in there? Is that you saying that stuff on Facebook where you pretty much can't take it down? I can, but you can't.
Well, maybe on that note, maybe it is not responding to the stuff like that, but responding to the stuff that you really want to enforce. So doing it both ways. So the stuff that you feel like should be perpetuated,
Yeah.
like, whether it be kindness and togetherness, or like you said, collaboration or whatever, is kind of going on and reinforcing those posts and sharing it where the other ones kind of are not.
Yeah.
So doing both. So you're the ones that aren't favorable aren't going to go anywhere, and the ones that are can actually go viral.
Yeah. Lisa.
Uh, well, it's interesting because this past weekend I was with three college friends, and mind you, I've known them for decades, and never before have I been aware of any of their political views at all. And then it became a few instances where you had to become aware of it or it was blatantly clear because my actually I'll tell you the truth, my friend's family paid for the I was in Boston, paid for the statue of Christopher Columbus in Columbus Park on the harbor,
Yeah.
and the base of the statue is still there,
Uh,
but the statue is gone. So there was immediate reactions from the other all three, all four of us,
yeah.
and I one of my go-tos is to try to present other points because I said, well, maybe they took it down. No, they didn't take it down. She said they destroyed it. And I said, well, they're putting other um, statues in museums now because one of them said, you can't erase history. It's dangerous to erase history. And then I said, and then there's another point where people are trying to figure out what to do in the blank spaces of all those empty base bases of statues. So I
Sure.
mean, the conversation dissipated quickly, but I never knew. And then while we were walking, of course, Roe v. Wade was overturned. So and nobody really commented on. We just somebody got an alert on their phone, and like, but we knew anyway. It was just
That's
like
no,
constant.
that's I think that not talking about it says more about your friendship than immediately having to spew. You know what I mean? Whatever it was or whatever you think it means. And the sad part of it is I think for people to be thoughtful about that and to be thoughtful about other people's uh, what hearing a conversation about that or drawing them into a conversation might not be the healthiest thing in the world for a lot of people, you know?
Right,
And I think that just shows high regard and a lot of mutual respect when people can notice that it happened and then just get back to enjoying being in Boston on the harbor.
right, which is my go-to. You have to, you know, back to living in the moment, be in the moment, appreciate the moment, and
Yeah.
it was a beautiful, gorgeous day, and we I think most of us did not want to ruin it.
Yes.
We did not.
It's interesting. And because I respect both of you so much, I will not go any further with that conversation other than to compliment human beings that are able to do in conversation what I'm trying to do on Facebook to get a little bit of muscle. Because when I see people go totally off, like become irrational in a moment, I know it isn't them being the intelligent, smart, trained human beings I know them to be. Because all of them know how to step back from some type of a problem in life or in their jobs. They get paid big money not to get invested in the world is over now because this is a problem. You know what I mean? It becomes like, what can this truly mean? What are potential outcomes of anything that's not what we'd like to see it be? I mean, this could be from somebody who gets, you know, brought a non-alcoholic beverage that actually has alcohol in it, and they put it to their mouth and they taste it, and how are you going to behave about that if you really are not somebody who likes to drink? Or the temperature of your steak, instead of being um, well, I'm pretty well known for liking rare beef. But if it comes another way, I'm not going to beat somebody up over it, and I will never send a piece of steak back. I'm just not going to do it. It dishonors the animal. So those are just kind of like my thoughts in the moment. And thanks for sharing that with me, because I know there's so many other people who got in the middle of some real knockdown dragouts in which you can't win. There's no argument there to win. You know what I mean? And nobody to tag out to, and no substitutions and no timeouts. And people are spending relationships, that have taken years and years and years to build. and saying things they can't take back. And why would they do that? Not their most informed or, shall we say, enlightened thinking.
And I think there comes to a point in a relationship with someone, if you really truly value the relationship, where you have to, if you don't agree with someone on something, you have to step back, and maybe you know that you will never agree on that. And that's okay. And you can agree on other things, and you can come to that person even for other things. But there doesn't, you don't like, you're two different people. You have
Right.
different views, you have different experiences, you have different lives. You know, I mean, I have a really close friend who we totally don't agree on something. And I just don't talk about it with her because it's kind of like, why bring it up? Because all it
Yes.
does is like, it doesn't get us anywhere really, because all we do is like, she has like her view on it, I have my view on it. And it's kind of like we still chat. We're still really good friends. And, she calls me about personal stuff. I call her about personal stuff. We call about business stuff. But we just, but that's her point, her viewpoint.
Yeah. And again, it's an intelligent person with an enlightened view of the world, who's willing to be able to distinguish it as a viewpoint from a belief that is just so. Damn it. It is just so.
Hmm.
If we
Because
all
this,
had, go
yeah.
ahead, Lisa.
So I was on another beach in Rhode Island on Sunday,
Yeah.
and there were four men in their 50s and 60s discussing all sorts of political issues, and I just sat back and listened to it all.
Uh-huh.
And one of the men were not discuss. I mean, was not participating, but he was listening. And then we all went back to the cottage, and the one that was not participating, with me, my sister, and my dad, said, "So everybody's all upset about this Roe v. Wade thing." But right before that, he said, I said, "Why weren't you participating in the conversation on the beach?" And he said, "Oh, I wasn't going to get involved with those guys." I said, "I didn't want to talk about political." I said, "But yet, you bring up Roe v. Wade in front of my sister and my father. That is a little bit political, honey."
Yeah.
You might not have noticed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A little.
So we did not discuss it because he knows my father very well too, and my sister and I both know my father very well too, and yeah, we know where he stands, and it's not with us.
So, everyone's right. You
Yeah,
know, they really are right. And the more right they are, the more willing that they're going to be to inflict and take, physical damage. And at some point, as this goes on and we have more of this public outrage and behavior with people dehumanizing other human beings, I'm not sure it looks very good on them. You know what I mean? I'm not. I think that's the kind of behavior that makes a close call like a decision that has to be made. Because if you're if you're in a situation and someone is daring you and you walk away, what are you going to get? You're going to get more of the same, right? However, if you were in a situation where somebody was really truly wanting to work out a solution, wouldn't you be willing to just kind of leave sleeping dogs alone and move on to bigger and better things? It's
well, I was going to
almost
ask you that. I was going to ask you that, like specifically, because I wondered about my response, because I just said, you just said you didn't want to talk about political, and now you bring this up. But I mean, he's a naturally inquisitive guy, and he doesn't think before he talks often. So
right.
he'll just blurt out the thing that's on top of his mind. But I thought after the fact, like maybe I should have just said, "Well, why don't you tell me how you feel," or something, and just see, and if it escalated to something horrible, then stop it. But
And that's the thing that courage right there to entertain the
right,
conversation by inviting it to come out. Most people are scared to death that once they get into the situation, there will be bloodshed. There will be no other possible outcome. But I really think I agree with you now. you know, not knowing the situation, but he thought enough of you to be quiet while the bozos, as he considered them, were having their go at every political probably thing. And then afterwards, he thought the adults were left behind, and now we could actually have a conversation where maybe somebody learned something or whatever. But you know,
Well, Bill, and I think you have to clarify for me, I don't know that I'm scared of physical bloodshed, for example, but I'm scared, let's say I'm fearful of, destroying a relationship, which I really hold value in
yeah,
for what it is. So to me, that's the bloodshed I'm concerned about, is like, creating a situation where all of a sudden one of us says something the other one is not willing to overlook, and and the whole friendship ending based on you know and so that's really where I have a hard time you know
and you know what? That's just more of the same. And let me explain what I mean by that.
I
That
know what.
that you would predict that this would be, a relationship ending really doesn't honor you with your expertise and your ability to rise to the occasion after the fact and not pick it up when somebody says something that's kind of a career ender or a relationship ender. you know it's kind of fun to basically say afterwards, well, now hang on, we've been friends for a very long time here, and I really want to hear what you have to say about this. We might never disagree, but you might teach me something. If we learned how to say that in response to somebody saying, but you've gotten to DEF CON 5, and I see this on the Facebook posts, the minute they start calling somebody names, like the Hitler guy or the terrorist supporter guy, talking about somebody who wrote something that was very simple, I believe in the Constitution. Well, you're a Hitler guy. What? So when you don't have a strong argument and enough self-confidence, then you have to throw things at people, and the verbal, slings and arrows are virtually as devastating to predict the outcome as they are actually to have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I had a circumstance recently where I have somebody who's now we're speaking, but and I actually extended myself afterwards and said, you know I really value as a friend. I mean, she was a really close friend. I love you,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And but I can tell by her interactions that the whole relationship is now strained.
Yeah.
Like, I can just feel it. Like it's not the same as it was before. You know, I
And
want it to be back, but she's not there yet. I guess or
do
whatever.
you really want the bad news, Jan?
What? Go
You
ahead.
know the conversation you have to have, right? You have to
Well,
put that conversation into the past. All of our people at home are now saying, yes, Jan, why would you let the possibility of that conversation have anything to do with your relationship at all? But see, the point here, we all are really good about giving other people advice, aren't we?
oh, absolutely.
And I love what Lisa said. Like, afterwards, I was starting to question whether maybe I should have invited him out to play. Who knows? That might have been the only time in the last 3 or 4 months that he actually ever said any or blurted something like that out because he trusted you so much.
No, he's a blurter.
It's a blur.
But
Well,
not in front of the boys.
and I afterwards thought to myself, maybe, we should never have had I don't know if that conversation I had with her would have ever been a bit avoidable,
Mm.
but, you know, because I don't think it would have been, but, you know, should we
I
have
can give you
avoided
some.
that?
I can give you some training wheels if you like. I went through a year long of training to speak with people about some transformational training that they could go through. And almost always, what ended up happening is they wound up equating the transformation to having to address horrible relationships in their lives. It's just where the conversation always seemed to go. When you ask somebody, where in your life could you use a little more enjoyment? Maybe a little less stuckness, maybe some aggravating thoughts that come to your mind repeatedly because you're reminded by looking at a person's picture or something of that nature. So the training wheels for that conversation, and I got to be pretty good at this over the course of a year, but the sentences go something like, so we've had opportunities in our lives to be really, really close together and share everything and look forward to seeing each other and just feeling nothing but love. And I don't know if we're feeling that way right now. And I'd like to just see if it's all right with you that we could have a conversation and you could tell me what's on your mind. And we'll set these rules up in advance. How does this sound to you? Whatever it is, we get to a point where we just can't be talking to each other anymore. We'll say, we're going to end this for today, but we're still, at least as far along in friendship as we were when we started the conversation. And we're not going to leave the conversation until we're both equally satisfied that the other person doesn't think less of us. How's that for setting up an opportunity for a chat? Do you know some people will not take that? They'll say, no, I'd rather just not.
I bet.
You've always been an asshole, and I think you're always going to be an asshole, and I'm just sorry. And then that's okay. That's where you are today.
Right. Start with
So,
where they are, right?
and as time goes on, that becomes a lot less mechanical, and it's a lot more like, you know, what's going on for you?
Hmm.
Just a real question about, you know, do me a favor and just be vulnerable for a minute or two and tell me what's really on your mind. I want to know. I care, you know? But when there's an awkwardness in talking about setting up a conversation, um, there's this thing called a self-fulfilling prophecy. And those little sentences that come in, we always do this. We're headed down a bad road when those kind of sentences come up. The thing I know about you, Jan,
Hmm.
is you're always going to care a lot more about the other person and how they're being taken care of than you are about yourself. That's my opinion of who I think you are.
Say that again.
I believe that if you're in a conversation with someone, your attention is going to be on if they're being taken care of or not, as
Mm,
opposed to you getting out of the conversation alive.
yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay. So I'd have no problem at all with having either one of you two ladies talk to anybody that's got really major grievances against me, because I know you could both identify with it and agree, and then at the same time and say, yeah, but he is kind of cute sometimes. He's a butthead, but he's cute sometimes, or whatever it is that would have to be said.
Right.
Oh, because we're all multifaceted, so have to.
That's right.
Yeah, and you both have a healthy dose of what I would call um, you know, critical joviality. You're intelligent, trained women, and you're able to come up quick with a joke when you need to, and quick with a laugh, right? And you're present and you're genuine. And I mean, folks at home, that's the best prescription I can come up with for a relationship.
Hmm.
And I
And
think
just that, go
being
ahead.
gracious, is growing up to see that that part of you is the better part of you, and then trying to bring that out in other people without harming them, you know. First, do no harm.
Right. But also constantly seeking, because most of the time when you're seeking it for yourself, like if
Hmm.
you're seeking that space for yourself, it is in the best interest of everyone. So
Hmm.
then, so if you can get that place to that space where you're navigating, let's say from you, as you said, from the highest, then usually it's going to be good for everybody else in addition. So if you kind of always seek for the highest of yourself, then it's easier to work with yourself than it is in a lot of ways. Like it's easier to, you can make changes within yourself. You can't make anyone else make a change. I mean, that's just,
Actually, yeah, there are some who would say that is the only place where you can make a
Hmm.
difference.
that's right. You know, exactly. I mean, we can only begin with ourselves. We can't, as much as we want things for other people, they have to do the work themselves.
And the old Gandhi quote, be the change you want to see in the world. Um,
That's my mug today.
Very good.
I'm a fairly good listener sometimes, not always, but so the thing is that there are so many ways that people can get through life without having to lead with their chin all the time. I mean, to stick your chin out over and over and over again, no matter what the circumstances are, the whole idea of well, for instance, we're not done with this summer. You know that, right? I'm hearing predictions that this is probably going to be worse with regard to demonstrations and all that stuff than we saw in 2020. For for the political value of being able to show those scenes on television and then human beings say what they say about it. For no other reason than that. It's a Rorschach test, and people who already believe X will continue to believe in a bigger X, and people who believe in Y will continue to believe in a bigger Y. And it won't really matter because there won't be an objective place where you can go and just get information. Almost every single news outlet, everything on the internet, all of the cable TVs, all of the radio, podcasts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, including this one, they have a preferred outcome that they would like to see with their message. And in most cases, it is to separate the listener from their money. Somehow, some way. Get them addicted to things that we're saying that get them energized, plugged in, upset, whatever it is, happy, whatever it is. They'll be back again the next time we post, and they'll have to pay and they'll let the advertising worms under their skull, and yeah, they'll be out there buying extra iPhones or whatever else it is. So, with that said, what is the advice for somebody who do we just not ever turn the TV on again? Do we just not ever, click on anything in our inbox? What do we do?
I think balance is the key too. I mean, well, you can't turn out a computer and not see something. I don't watch the news at all, but
Right.
I can't help but see what's going on. Just the search engine comes up and there's all the today's headlines, so you can't help but know what's going on.
Right.
I balance that out with positive things all the time, or remember where I am. I'm not in a mall just being bombed by, what I mean. Where we are is too, in most cases, too wonderful right now to ignore. But the rest of the world is happening, and you can't ignore that either. So it's a creative balance. I, the only way that I can survive.
I appreciate that you presenced that. This is the most fortunate place in the world for a human being to be born and to get raised. In terms of whatever it is that you think isn't working about here, we've at least got a structure to help make it work at some point, if you really want to. There are other parts of the world where people live and die before the age of 1 and no one cares. And no one even knows it, and there's nobody to mourn them. But with that thought in mind, do we have things that we need to work on together to make this a better place? Absolutely. And is there far more good? Is this a good place to raise a Tonka? You know?
'Cause I look at my every day. I get the screensaver things of a different beautiful place in the world,
Yeah.
and I'm going, oh, I want to go there. I want to, and then half the time I realize a lot of them are in countries where people are dying to get out of. And if everybody lived in a nice utopia, and you could just visit where you wanted to visit and come back to your home because most people would want to stay in their home country.
Yeah.
They don't want to leave, so but I mean, I know that's not the reality, but I just look at these beautiful pictures and go, why would, they have they want to leave this beautiful place. No, they have to leave this beautiful place, you
Well, I
know.
think if you look at that, if people were to be objective going on what you both have been saying and kind of look at their own life and realize how much they have to be thankful for, they might not be so willing to get out of their life by whatever means that means, whether that means escapism through other things or by monetarily purchasing stuff that they think is going to make them happy. Like if they were to look at what actually they have
Right.
and be grateful for that, just like if they were to look at their, where they live and look at the beauty that is. Like, I mean, I think we live in one of the most beautiful countries on the face of the earth,
Yes.
Mhm.
you know.
There, while you're saying that, I'm really wondering. Um, so many thoughts coming together at the same time here. The popcorn is going, but you know the enemy of any culture is affluence.
Mhm.
When people have all of their fundamental needs met to the point where they're focusing so much on that last little bit and being choosing to be upset by it's being missing or not being perfect or all those other things, it's the affluence and the having not had to struggle to get what they have, not having a sense of recognizing the value what's that's in front of them. And unfortunately, in order for any system to be malfunctioning where to the point where it's not working anymore, you only need 5%, you know this from the medical industry, 5% exceptions of things that are wrong and need to be uh, handled that the system doesn't handle automatically. The informal system kicks in, and now instead of being 95% effective, you're on the way to being 40 to 50% effective because people don't trust the documentation, they don't trust people's diagnoses, they don't trust. Okay, and it's the same thing in manufacturing data. If the computer is 98% accurate, which is always the target to be as close to 100% as possible, we know that 5% exceptions, 5 out of 100, means people don't trust the system any longer, and that's where everything breaks down. So now, when you have 5% of our culture behaving in a radical way and no one correcting them, what's the message that we're sending to people? We're actually telling them that this is a desired behavior, aren't we? If you do something that you know is against the law and there's no consequence for it, we're reinforcing that that was a good thing you did. I don't know, that's the way it was when I was a kid. I always told on myself, and if I didn't get beat, then I knew I was on the right track.
So what are you relating this to specifically? Like, you have to have something in your mind.
All kinds of things. First of all, horrible behavior to other human beings.
Mhm.
Like, that's okay. I'm just passionate, but you're an asshole. Okay. And then how about tearing down statues? How about burning Seattle, Portland, uh, 25 cities last year and the year before? I started off this whole segment talking about this is a lot of people are concerned that this is going to be a more violent summer than those that we look back on and say that wasn't okay. Why did we start the podcast in the first place? Because that's all we could see on all the media, this angst and people fighting with each other and burning things and not being cool. But we didn't believe that that's the way most people are. We believe that the people who want to sell us things were using that information to sell us more things. because it's like a train wreck. You can't look away. If
So
you're a normal,
just out of curiosity, do you think uh, marches are not do any good at all, or that sort of thing?
so no, we really can't collapse what the synergy of demonstrating together in a peaceful fashion, especially in a respectful, peaceful fashion. That's huge. I think that basically says to people in some of the most powerful demonstrations that I've seen where people didn't even speak. They just walked together holding hands, which made people wonder what's going on. We're not happy, and we're out here expending our energy to attract attention to the fact that we think something that happened shouldn't happen anymore. But, for our leaders to stand with a bullhorn and incite a group of people to do things. Well, let's just talk about, the marches at the Supreme Court, the marches at the homes of all of the Supreme Court justices on the conservative side. But how about, since the announcements last week, the um, the number of places where there were bodily injuries to policemen during what could have been peaceful demonstrations. But they don't necessarily, that's what I'm talking about 100%. If you're going to go and demonstrate and you've got, let's say, 1,000 people, but 50 of them choose to break the law,
Right.
and you're scared about what the other 950 are going to do if you arrest those 50 people, and you don't do it, pretty much telling everybody, everywhere that we value this behavior.
Right.
So let's
I mean, I think I would argue with the word value. I think that, and maybe that's just because I'm being, I don't know, too, I don't know, but that word, I think that we condone or we find it's acceptable, which is, I think that, I don't know, value to me. I mean, I think I look at value as a different, like to me, it has a different kind of meaning. So I don't know that I could, I mean, I don't obviously don't agree with behavior, but it's just like to say that by doing nothing, we value it. I don't know if it's saying that we value it. We just don't like, we're saying basically it's like we're saying it's okay. And I think that that's different than value. And so I'm like sitting there going, well, if you consider it acceptable, then it's not deterring anybody else from doing it. So I don't know. It's
actually
just simple.
inviting. Yeah, what I'm saying, you're absolutely right. I chose the word carefully, as I usually
Yeah,
do.
no, I knew you did, but I'm just saying I don't
But
agree with that. You know, yeah.
someone values it, okay? Someone values the fact that we have $7 gas in California right now. Someone does value that. They think this is what should be happening. And what I'm saying is that we don't have a consistent message to our
No.
population any longer, and it's now to the point where um, there are people that are very much concerned that we will not bring it back. We will never get back to where we were 5, 6 years ago. And the concern about that is that, do you know how many people lose their lives every single year because they can't cope with this anymore? Why do you think that there's a fentanyl problem? Are these happy people seeking, an enlightened experience? Or are they people that really can't stand their lives because of affluence or whatever else it is, that they don't have to worry about survival? They can have very small regard for their life. And I feel strongly about every single life being important. Every single last person. This is a unique lotto that you and I have won. We got here, you know?
Hmm.
So, with that in mind, do we, using the psychology definitions, if you don't want to see more of something, you ignore it. But if you do want to see more of something, you actually give praise for it. And where I came up with the word value is listening to a montage of responses to the question of people actually being at the Supreme Court justices' homes in the street, which is against the law. It's against a federal statute, it's against a state statute, and it's against a local ordinance. Intimidating an officer of the court, to affect an outcome is against the law. Every single state in the country. But no one was you know nobody was arrested that I'm aware of. Nobody was ever even told you have to disperse because this is an illegal. You do not have the right, to assemble in an unlawful way. That's not the law, right? But you know who Jen Psaki is, right?
Go ahead, tell me.
She's the past spokesperson for Joe Biden, who takes press corps questions every single day, and she was asked every single day, uh, does the president support these people breaking the law, picketing and yelling and threatening the Supreme Court justices at their homes? And she said, we do support people peacefully protesting. So now, is there a mixed message there? And not to say that what she says that everybody's going to listen to and do with what she says, but the point is, when it comes down to somebody in a school asking a child to do something these days, are there questions about the motivations of who's speaking and who's listening? Through many areas of our culture where we used to have order.
Well, I mean, you're blending two different things, I think, between. So whose responsibility is it to disperse the crowds? Should we do you whittle it down to local, and
No, I think those people that are out there breaking the law, feeling like it's a good thing, were let down in the way that they were trained when they were 6, 7, and 8 years old. You by how you train children, I'm just telling you, by how you train children, you will get the behaviors as an adult for the whole rest of their lives. And the more that they are in a trustworthy environment where they have respect for authority and also are part of the authority system themselves by their compliance and questioning when there's something that doesn't seem right. I'm not just saying blindly follow, but when there's a training of proper conduct and acceptable behaviors, that's what you're going to see in the grown-up adults. So I wouldn't say, like, right now we've told the police they can't do their jobs for 3 years. They're not allowed to arrest people unless it's whatever it is. And when they are arrested, in many cases, they go in major metropolitan areas, and those guys are immediately put back out on the street. So if we just look at those behaviors, would we do that if we didn't value the outcomes that we're getting as a result of it? Somebody? Probably not you and I, Jan, but somebody values it.
information is so quick these days too, though. I mean, I don't know if you surveyed every person that's out there breaking the law, would you find out that 90% of them came from a childhood where they didn't respect authority? It'd be interesting to look at it. Or
Well, and that's a really good question. And what I might be saying is we've taught kids to be good followers, haven't we?
Well, maybe it's not the fact that we taught them not to whatever that there were, but maybe the fact that there was no authority is a better way to put it. So,
Yeah.
basically, you've taken a group of, let's say, kids
Yep.
whose primary education was not the immediate family, primary, like, and now all of a sudden, so they had no, there was no one in their life telling them, talking to them about being responsible or talking about authority. Who was talking about authority? TV, social media, all those different other things, which, all of a sudden we've taken a group of people and basically said, there's no such thing as authority.
Or even worse than that, we gave them video games that they could play for 25 hours a week where they kill people.
That's right.
Mhm.
Exactly. No, exactly.
It's
It
all
just,
about taking whatever line would be there between good and evil. We knew the difference between good and evil when we were kids, didn't we? And we
yeah,
knew it was our choice in any moment, that we'd have the consequences that go along with that.
we're also not addressing some of one of the, key things, which is nutritionally. I mean, and the fact that, they say kids that are malnourished, or which a lot of kids are, even though they're, mostly all people here in this country are malnourished, even though,
Yeah.
because our diet's so poor, is the fact that, if they're malnourished, but till the age of 5, they never get that back. Like the
Right.
brain is completely affected for the rest of their life going forward. So we're also like have that to add on top of being, not shown any, what I would say, quote unquote, authority. Like there were guidelines about, I assume for all of us when we grew up, about the way you treated people, and, and being cordial and respectful, and, you know, to people. I mean, that was just part of, like, who you were,
Yes.
you know.
So remember, I am not advocating that I know anything. I am not saying this is how it is. I am asking the question of our listeners and of us. We're struggling right now, to try to hold this conversation, because it literally is like kneading jello. You know what I mean? It's like, how can you, we don't have the ability to grok people who behave in a way that we don't understand and don't do the things that are in the best intention of their own lives, let alone the people whose lives they're destroying. And then there's also this other neat thing that's going on, that some of these people are getting paid to do this, to go out and gather these folks together and incite the violence, and they've got Reddit, and they've got all these other different ways to communicate with each other about where we're going to be and who we're going to do this to and do that to. And none of those things ever come to light until it's too late. It's after the fact. So my question comes right back to when we're talking about being, I said at the beginning, being gracious in winning and losing. There have been a lot of ingracious winners. You know what I mean? I mean, there, you got to know, it doesn't go your way this time, the pendulum going to swing out that direction and get to a point where it can't swing no more, and then it's coming back again. It's like inhaling and exhaling. It's like the tide coming in and going out, the sun rising and setting. All these systems just keep going, no matter what the talking heads say. So I'm optimistic, and I'll tell you what I'm optimistic about. So one of you can say, "Well, Bill, what is it that you're optimistic about?"
Bill, what is it that you're optimistic about?
We're
I
dying to know.
Yeah, thank you. I was hoping someone would ask. So I am optimistic that there will be a season of love, that there will be, you know, a kind of a tsunami of people who are just going to hold each other long enough for the fear to go away. And I
This
think
is
we
the
can do
dawning
it.
of the age of Aquarius.
Yeah, well, we're in another
Yep,
age of Aquarius, aren't we?
yep.
So I loved that. I really did. I mean, I thought the whole idea of people really giving a good rap about each other, not just because it was a good excuse to smoke dope, because it was that, but and other things. But now that's mostly legal, and that's not being rebellious anymore. That's just choosing a lifestyle, instead of beer, or whatever. But the point is that I think when enough people hit that wall where they say enough's enough, we're just not going to treat each other that way anymore. And you folks, that there's something you're getting out of this. In many cases, it might be they're earning a living going from city to city. Groups of people starting all of this unrest and getting people, set up to carry it on when they leave. I may have just made that up. I want you to know I know that I may have just made that up. And if I didn't make it up, isn't it interesting how you get to see the same types of behaviors, the same types of demonstrations with the same words on the placards in cities all across the United States? Do you think they just came up with that on their own, either for something or against it? As you said, Lisa, it's really easy to be organized these days. Word travels fast.
It does.
So, in keeping for the whole reason to have a podcast called Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, got to come back around and every once in a while just notice. And you can't step over and act like, everybody's totally happy about where we are right now. And when we were talking about going and asking each one of the people in the demonstration, if you had 1,000 people that were demonstrating, they'd all have a darn good reason, no doubt in my mind. They're mostly there because there's something going on in their life or their personal experience that really didn't work for them, and it's causing them to go out and to demonstrate and to show up. I applaud that behavior. Now, what's the next step after that? Can we do it lawfully?
I think
Do we,
most things have been done, and it's not everything is personal when it come down to making change. You know, otherwise you wouldn't be in it. You know, if you have that much passion for something, it's a personal reason, so you move forward with it. But um, yeah, what's after doing well, research? I think is a good thing to do if you can find the right research to back the the what you want to see in the
right?
world, to come to find the people that are already doing that. I think is like one of the
But I guess
main.
the question I have is even with the research sometimes is how do you make change?
Right.
I'm on a call every week, and one of the women on has been trying to um is a sleep researcher, and she's been trying to change the quality of sleep and working toward quality of sleep in general the population, because she's dealing a lot, she's talking a lot about like if you're in a city, like billboard lights and all that kind of stuff, which now can penetrate, and then hospital settings where you're, and how do you make change even when the research is there showing you that,
Mhm.
this is what you need to change. So I guess then where do you go? Like, how do you get change to happen? I guess is a really good question, because sometimes even peacefully, or there are certain things you learn, like sometimes you feel like, but still nothing, but what's happening and how long does it take? Because, she's been doing research on it for 20 years, or 30 years.
I think that's the state of the world right now. Everybody doesn't know how to make the change.
Things
You know,
right. Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
feel so passionately, but like not what do I literally asked that question. What can we
Me
do
too.
as a solo person that it does feel passionate about these new things that are happening? And there's so many of them that are happening, but you pick one or pick two, but what is the next step?
Right. And I think that that's where it comes to, like you said, taking personal responsibility and making any changes that you can make, knowing that hopefully it's going to ripple out, but still that doesn't seem to be enough.
Right.
It'll never be enough. A person has to speak in a language that another person understands and can repeat. Then that person has to do the same. And then that person has to do the same. And then that person when you get to 5% of the population all saying the same thing in a dispassionate voice that's listenable by the next person's because it's logical, it makes sense, it's good for people, all that. Um, then it gets to 10%. It's on its way to happening. But being in a situation where you're against everything and just changing your hat to something new to get pissed off about in this moment because they told you it's time to be pissed off about that. In the whole world, the same freaking thing's being done. Are you aware of that? It's being done in Australia, it's being done in Europe, in the UK. The goal is to keep the citizenry completely upset all the time and to give them no peace from it. Why do you think we can't sleep? Being awake is hard. You know what I mean? So you almost have to have, evolve to the Ken mentality is I just choose what I'm going to let into my world.
Hmm.
And at the same time, he is making a difference with a group of people. He's picking up one starfish at a time and tossing them back in the ocean. Made a difference with that one.
Yep.
And that's really it. I think when people get together, and this is an interesting thing, what people believe is that they can get together about a complaint and create a possibility. It's not possible. You cannot be complaining about something that you want to change and change that. Because do you know what you're complaining about? You're complaining about the effect that's left by something actually happening. You cannot act on an effect and make a change. You can only do something positive. So if you're complaining about something in your life, like not enough money or not enough love or not enough food, you can't change that. However, if you start having a conversation about being active, healthy, and wealthy, all things are possible. Well, you're busy expending energy complaining about what's wrong. Those are moments of your life you'll never get back where you should have been busy building something, riding your bicycle, eating good nutritional value, being on purpose in terms of studying what sort of things will allow you to be that rarefied breed that makes it to 110 years old in a healthful condition, not just because the drugs made you live that long. I don't know. What if? I will tell you this. Whenever there's been something that enough people agreed needed to have lasting change, they didn't do it in the political process. They did it as a culture. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
The culture has to be strong enough to tell politicians you're doing it wrong. This isn't who we are. We don't know why you're doing this, but we don't like it, and you need to stop. Our culture is being put to that test, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And I think I'm very optimistic about how the culture is going to. I think, you know, I think the return of the Jedi is coming.
I
And
think what you were saying, yeah, I'll just final. I know you're going to ask, so I'll just like it still comes down to, response or react. It's better to respond no matter what.
and that's worth expanding on for our listeners for a minute or two. A response is like after a pause, with the ability to kind of like really make sure that you understand what just happened, what got said, and that what comes back out of you is not a knee jerk, not something that's a given with a stimulus and a response, and it's predictable and it's always the same at the same intensity level. Might even just be a question, and it might be like Lisa, you said before. Say some more about that. So thanks for going on my little journey of graciousness in winning and losing, because I think whether you're in a victorious posture in this moment neither makes your future life any better or makes anybody else's life any better, because it's not about winning. It's about growing. It's about creating a true north, with all of our hearts and minds and souls, that we know when we're off track, right? And when we don't know, we might have a couple of really cool friends who will come over and say, "There, I'm going to slap you around for a minute, but you're going the wrong place here." We know you to be a lot more of a great human being than what's coming out of your mouth right now. You might want to think it over just a little bit. Now, how many of us would look forward to that conversation from a really dear friend? I would like to throw my hand in the air and say guilty as charged, because I do like to talk.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, any final thoughts we can leave our listeners with? And
That was mine. Respond rather than react.
I like it.
And mine is listen.
Yes.
Listen and ask questions.
It's very interesting. So here's my question for y'all at home. You've been very quiet. I do appreciate the vibes that we're receiving from you. You'll be hearing this in the future, but we're getting them today. And I would just like to know, if you were going to predict what kind of a summer this is going to be, should we whip a little Aquarius on our country at the moment and have a little bit of fun and love? I don't know.
Yep.
So thank you all for tuning us in, and we are lighting the candle, a world that works, and we're just going to keep working on that. So thank you, Jan. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye for now, y'all.
Have a good week.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch us each week, as well as the rest of the network, at exvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.